Well, I got my notes, check. Sunglasses, check. Hat, check. Pepsi, check. Thick skin, check. Let's go. Hey, welcome to Golden Blue Dude, everybody. If you're a college football fan, might as well hit the like and subscribe button because that's all we do over here. Go check out our Patreon page. We call our Patreons the shot callers because that's exactly what they do around here. And when the regular season gets here, our Patreons will get to decide which game we'll live stream, and you'll get to watch with Golden Blue Dude. And the score prediction contest will be coming back. Every week I pick out a game and my Patreons guess the score, and whoever comes closest to the score wins 20 bucks every single week, and you can win as many times as you want. The higher the Patreon, the more guesses you get per week. So I have this strong feeling in my gut that if the Big 12 wants to survive, they got to get 20 members somehow, some way. Now, it looks like that the Big Ten and the SEC have closed their doors for now for expansion. So the SEC has added Oklahoma and Texas from last year. Not sure exactly what year they're going to join. And then the Big Ten has added USC and UCLA from the Pac-12. I believe they're supposed to start in the Big Ten in 2023, 2024, something like that. But for now, they're closing their doors to expansion for 2022, from what I understand. Now, that doesn't mean they're done. Not by a long shot. No, they're going to keep adding until they have the number of teams that they want, and then they're probably going to break off from the NCAA, create their own conference, league, division, whatever you want to call it, and have their own governing body and have their own rules, which is long overdue, to be honest with you. I mean, the NIL thing came out. I'm actually for the NIL, but they have to find a way to govern it and making it easy for everybody that's involved. So they'll keep on adding for years to come. The question is, who's going to jump with them? Well, the Pac-12, I think you're a sinking ship. I don't think the Pac-12 is going to endure this. I don't think you're going to exist for much longer. And you're trying to speed up media deal negotiations because you see the writing on the wall. I don't see you getting a good media deal, especially after losing USC and UCLA. Even the current TV deal is crap. $19.8 million per team per year. That's terrible. Bottom of the barrel. So the Pac-12 is done away with. It's going to come down to the Big 12 and the ACC. So for the Big 12 to survive, you're gonna have to get to 20 teams. Now, the Big 12 has had a rocky past, a rocky recent past. Their losses include Texas A&M, Nebraska, Missouri, and Colorado in the first go-around. They did gain West Virginia and TCU, so they lost 4, gained 2, and then more recently they lost Oklahoma and Texas, but gained Cincinnati, BYU, UCF, and Houston. So lost 2, gained 4. So ultimately, it has evened out. They have lost 6, and they have gained 6. So current members: Baylor, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas State, UCF, and West Virginia. So it is a true Big 12, but they have got to get to 20 teams. How do they do that? Well, the first thing they could do is straight up merge with the Pac-12. I don't advise this at all. I think this is a bad situation if you do that. I mean, number one, you are very much hurting your Eastern teams like West Virginia, Cincinnati, and UCF. They already have huge travel issues right now. If you straight up merge with the Pac-12, that would make their travels even worse, and they'd probably want to leave the Big 12. But if you were to straight up merge with the Pac-12, now Pac-10 actually, that would mean you'd have 22 members. Boom, you're at 20 members. But you'd also probably lose some members because of adding too many teams from out west. So the Big 12 would look like this: Baylor, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas State, UCF, West Virginia, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Cal, Oregon, Oregon State, Stanford, Utah, Washington, Washington State. Yeah, very much a West Coast heavy Big 12. Basically, the Pac-12 stretched out Midwest, or the Big 12 stretched out West Coast. The teams on the East side would be totally screwed. So I am totally against this plan. I do not think the Big 12 should just straight up merge with the Pac-12. So what's another option? Well, another option is get teams from the Pac-12 and the ACC. So what teams should you add from the Pac-12? Well, there's 4 teams that are the best fit for the Big 12 as far as geography. And that's Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. But then there's 2 teams that are the best brands for the Big 12. And that's Oregon and Washington. So you need to take 4 out of that group. Who would it be? I'll get to that here in a minute. But you'd also need to pick off from the ACC to balance it out and help out the teams that are on your east side of your conference. So the teams that you could target out of the ACC would be a Louisville, a Pitt, a Virginia Tech, a Boston College maybe, a Syracuse, a Virginia, Georgia Tech, and a Wake Forest. I don't think you're getting a North Carolina. I don't think you're getting a Clemson, a Florida State, or a Miami, an NC State, or a Duke, because they're going to get paired up with North Carolina wherever North Carolina goes. So you get 4 teams out of the Pac-12 and 4 teams out of the ACC. We're going to go best case scenario and worst case scenario, but either way, the Big 12 still getting to 20 teams. So the Big 12, yes, getting to 20 teams, but what's the best case scenario to them getting 20 teams? And what's the worst case scenario for them to get 20 teams? And I've thrown out the complete merger with the Pac-12. That would be 22 teams. So we'll start off with the worst case scenario for the Big 12 getting to 20 teams. The 4 teams that they would get out of the Pac-12 would be Arizona, Arizona State, Washington State, and Oregon State. So not the best brands and 2 of the best fits, but also 2 of the worst fits and 2 of the worst brands. Those are not the 4 teams, not the combo you want out of the Pac-12. And I'm not trying to throw shade on the Arizona schools, not at all. I'm just saying in this pairing, this would be horrible for the Big 12. Well, worst case on the ACC side would be Boston College, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, and Wake Forest. I mean, Syracuse has the largest fan base in the ACC as far as who identifies as a football fan, a Syracuse football fan, but they can't even fill a 50,000 seat stadium. And that would probably be your best brand out of the ACC. So the Big 12 would look like this: Baylor, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas State, UCF, West Virginia, Arizona, Arizona State, Washington State, Oregon State, Boston College, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest. Yikes, that does not look like a good conference at all. I mean, you'd have a lot of numbers, but the brands, they're just not there. You'd just be adding teams for the sake of adding teams. You wouldn't really be adding any type of value to the Big 12. So now that I've gone through the worst case scenario as far as the Big 12 getting to 20 teams, now it's time for the best case scenario for the Big 12 to get to 20 teams. Well, out of the Pac-12, I think you get Utah and Colorado, and that's out of the category of best fit. Now, I went back and forth between Utah and Colorado, Arizona and Arizona State. So no offense to my Arizona and Arizona State subscribers. It was really, really close. It was basically a flip of the coin, but I am going with Utah and Colorado as far as out of the best fit category. And then to go along with those 2, you'd have Oregon and Washington. So you'd be adding 2 of the best fit and the 2 best brands remaining. So that would be a great get for the Big 12. But to balance it out, you need to go over to the ACC. So best case scenario as far as getting teams out of the ACC. Getting a Louisville, a Pitt, a Virginia, and a Virginia Tech. So you keep the Virginia Tech-Virginia rivalry together, and the Louisville-West Virginia rivalry, the Pitt-West Virginia rivalry, the Virginia Tech-West Virginia rivalry, Virginia Tech-Louisville, Virginia Tech-Pitt, Pitt-Louisville. All those rivalries are great rivalries, and you're keeping them intact. And you're looking at some pretty good brands in there. You're looking at Oregon, Washington. I think Louisville's a pretty good brand. Pitt's a decent brand. Virginia Tech's a really good brand. So the Big 12 would look like this in the best case scenario: Baylor, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas Tech, UCF, West Virginia, Oregon, Washington, Utah, Colorado, Louisville, Pitt, Virginia Tech, and Virginia. That looks like a pretty good Big 12. But don't forget about Memphis or Boise State. Those 2 would be your fallback plan in case you can't get 2 of the brands that I mentioned. Let's say you can't get an Oregon or a Washington or a Louisville or a Pitt or whatever, then you could fit in a Memphis or fit in a Boise State. And I think they're probably the best 2 brands remaining out of the group of 5 conferences. You've already gotten BYU, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston. Well, the next 2 best brands out of the group of 5 would be Memphis and Boise State. But I wouldn't put them in the first group. I would put them in the fallback group, and it would keep you out of the worst case scenario as far as getting to 20 teams. First of all, the Big 12 needs to get to 20 teams, and I've given you the best case and the worst case scenario for the Big 12 to get to 20 teams. So y'all let me know in the comments section. Number 1, do you think the Big 12 will get to 20 teams? And number 2, which one do you think is more likely? Best case scenario, worst case scenario, or somewhere in between? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.